To have a good harvest, one must plant good seeds and must also use the right kind of fertilizer. The carrots have grown large and firm. How good they will taste.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Backyard Gardens podcast. And no, you don't need to check your calendars because it is not Thursday. We have decided that there was a need for us. Let me not even front. We recognized that we were running out of time to talk about certain things about fall in time for you to get going. So we record podcasts, all the episodes, not all of them, but we do in advance. These are very real time because we felt an urge and a desire to get these out to you because it's important. And we want you guys to have a fall garden if you so desire. Wouldn't you say, Batavia?
This has to be quick. It's fewer words from me, more bells. Let's go.
Let's do this. So, and as usual, everybody, if you like what we're doing, please, I was going to say hit the subscribe, but this ain't YouTube. What am I talking about? Become a subscriber, Apple, Patreon, and also the Planter app. So we're going to keep all the ads short, but the Planter app's great. There's a link below to get you a discount on it and get yourself some seeds from our seed shop. So this one was spurred from, I'm moving fast, everybody, I'm telling you, our Facebook page. All of these were spurred from our Facebook page, actually, which is Backyard Gardens Community Garden. It's the group. And Caleb writes, and I thought this was great. I really did. I appreciated the honesty. Not going to lie, hardcore summer guy only here. Why should I grow a fall garden?
Because you will love it. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Episode's over. Everybody have a good day.
It's Cabe, isn't it? Did I misspell it? It's Caleb. Hey, Caleb.
There you go. I paused in the beginning to give you a chance and you didn't take it. So
well, I wanted to make sure that when I kind of ginned up the excitement around the hay, that I was getting his name right. So I mean, I feel like it's a nicer time to garden, right? Just generally speaking, when you're out in the garden in the fall, it's just the weather's nicer. We're in most places in the cool down. I enjoy being in the garden more then, and it's nice also to have kind of new crops compared to some of the things that are dying from summer, that are looking pretty bad and brown in your garden. So like I like the chance to get one more shot at it before the gardening year closes too.
Yeah. And I mean, I like it because you think about fall and winter, and a lot of the stuff we grow in the summer is not long storage stuff. And when I say storage, I mean, yeah, you can can it, but if you think about a lot of things that come out of the garden in the cool season, which would be spring, or as we're saying here, fall, a lot of this stuff can store for a really long time, which just allows you to enjoy the fruits, the vegetables of your garden for that much longer into the year. It's a more productive time. And to me, it's a more joyful time because I'm not just looking at tomatoes and peppers that are like, God, please just put the bullet in me. They're just begging to end it. And you're kind of giving your garden new life and you're starting over. And not to mention, I mean, in the, part of the show too, is it gives you an opportunity to really hone in on these spring and fall vegetables even more. You get 2 shots at it a year.
Yeah. There are, I think, distinct differences, not many, but a few, when it comes to some of these same cool weather crops, if you're growing them in the spring versus the fall. Coming out of the cold, going into the warm in the spring, it's different than coming out of the heat, going into the cooler weather in the fall. And it does impact some of the things that will be growing. The thing about, I think, fall is kind of that second shot, like you mentioned and I had mentioned earlier, it also is, you could look at it even as kind of a pre-run for spring, flip it on its head, right? For me, I'm going to this fall be kind of making up for the things I didn't get into my garden this past spring. But you could absolutely look at it to say, hey, I'm going to test a couple of things out for my plans for my spring garden next year. Whichever way, encourages you to get out there and do it, I think that's the way that you should look at it. I do want to go back to comment on this idea of like the types of vegetables. There's something that is hardier about the things that we're growing, when it comes to the cool weather crops and in fall. One could argue there, more health benefits to those types of plants, those vegetables that are coming off of those plants.
I mean, they make you poop more.
And that is a benefit to your health.
Look, the rage these days is gut health. So there you go.
Yeah, that's the appropriate. Okay, yeah, politically correct.
I'm not politically correct.
I was just gonna say,
sorry.
I'm all about being regular.
Yeah, man.
But
look, the older you get, the more you look forward to that. Yeah. I remember people being like, I'm going to get old one day and be drinking prune juice. Now everybody don't drink prune juice. They just eat cabbage and broccoli and,
get that roughage, yeah. But I mean, I think that if I look back, like if you're a hardcore summer guy, Caleb, because you enjoy those particular vegetables, then, and that's really what you love to grow. And let's say you've grown other vegetables, which he says that I don't think he has, in other times of the garden season, then all right, you got it. I get it.
Well, and I mean, I know Caleb asked a question, but there are a lot of people out there that don't understand that you can grow again in fall. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to kind of, because this is like a little mini series, you could say. So each episode coming in will kind of build in the fall to get these main questions out for people who don't really know or understand or anything like that. But it's, a lot of people think growing into fall could mean my tomato producing into fall. That's not what we're talking about at all, because if you do something like you take something from your summer garden, unless you're growing a cool season vegetable in your summer garden, that frost date is the end of the garden. Whereas a fall garden, that frost date is the midpoint of the garden almost. I mean, you have to think about that. Like, it's a huge difference in time frame. So you're taking it, we talk a lot. Do we talk a lot? I don't know. Within conversation and stuff, and in both of our YouTube channels, we definitely practice and talk a lot about season extension. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And and we've never said this before, the first part of season extension is planting the appropriate vegetable, because just in that act alone, you're already extending your garden. And I'm going to go on a limb here and say across the board, you could extend it easily by at least a month. With some crops, your cabbages, your real hardy crops, kale, stuff like that can really take a cold. That stuff can last much past your freeze. I mean, you've harvested in what, December, January?
I was literally having this conversation like an hour ago. January, I was harvesting kale and collards for my garden. January of this current year, you're listening to this as a new episode, and those greens were planted in the spring of the previous year. I'm even in a short episode, I'm gonna challenge that a little bit, so extending the garden season, extending your season. I think there's one piece of that, meaning beyond what you would expect, beyond what you're accustomed to, right? And so to that degree, well, yeah, definitely, it's absolutely driven by the types of vegetables you're planting. But if you look at it to say a cabbage, which is going to be hardier than, let's say, or spinach is going to be hardier than chard or something, right? Like those plants are designed to take colder temperatures. Yeah. That's the season for them. Like, we're really not extending them by much. They're designed to be in there. All right. So could I could the greens that I harvested in January survive without any steps for me to take? Yeah, they did, because I didn't do anything special with them. So I look at like the extension would have been taking steps to be able to push them to February, because we had some really cold weather coming in January. But yeah, to your point, had I had something different, they wouldn't have stood a chance, coming out of the year.
Yeah, I've always considered like the end of the season is the frost date. Mm-hmm. That's the end of the season. And actually, I think that may be a holdover from when I was just starting and I didn't have a fall garden. That may be a holdover portion, because it's like, how many times, you go out there and you're like, well, that's it. They got frost burnt, and then it's like you pull everything out or you leave it until the spring, whatever people do. But that's part of it, and I've always just kind of had that stuck in my head. So I do consider after your frost date, if you're continuing to grow, that's an extension of the season. So, and it's funny too, because I don't want to hang up on this for too long because we are short on time, but I don't, the season of the garden isn't really spring, summer, fall. It's frost to frost. That's the season, right?
Yeah. Your frost-free days
within
are
the season. Yeah.
Generally your growing season, because you could argue you could extend your spring, the actual season of spring growing, further by taking steps. But we don't refer to that as season extension, really, which is a different conversation. We'll talk offline about whether or not we want to explore that a bit more.
Are we calling it wrong? No. Are we saying it wrong, do you think?
If you want to sit here for a second, I'm always willing to dig in for a bit. I think generally speaking, if you ask someone about season extension, they're going to describe it as, fall going into winter. I think that's just the general concept that people look at. But I think technically, we've talked a lot about shade cover as an example. We've talked a lot about it as it relates to heat more recently. But if you go back to spring, think about how to get more out of your spring crops for longer. We speak about garden seasons in multiple ways, right? So spring is a season, summer is a season, fall is a season, and for some, winter is a season. Then we also speak about the growing season as basically the year
as a whole.
Yeah, which is the frost-free dates. I think is a pretty accurate way to describe it.
Yeah, so it's funny. This is actually blowing my mind right now, because we were having a conversation before the show about, the what was it that we were talking? You worded it just right.
Of course, we were talking
did. The culture.
Oh yeah,
the culture of the gardener, and the part of it is the culture of it is like we talk in multiple seasons, multiple languages, but in reality, it should be standardized. You know what I mean? Like the season, it's frost to frost. And then anything outside of that should be considered season extensions. So that's my thought.
This is why it's healthy to talk to gardeners and aspiring gardeners, or gardeners of all experience and those that aspire to be gardeners, because that's a check and balance. That reminds you when you kind of speak in those double entendres and you describe a thing that isn't quite accurate, but the culture has kind of claimed it, right?
Yeah.
Someone will ask you like, wait, you said we're extending the season, we're extending summer, or we're extending no. We're not talking about growing tomatoes in December. We say that all of the time, right? But you said we're talking about season extension, right? So sometimes it is there's a contradicting effort to what we do.
So what we'll do is we will after this episode's over, we're going to sit down and we're going to discuss and we're going to standardize the way we talk. Next episode, we'll have it for you. So next one of these short episodes, we'll have it. Yeah, from this point forward. Because it is, it can be confusing. And for somebody that is just looking into getting into a fall garden or curious why, it is confusing to say because, I stand by what I said. If we say from frost to frost, you're going past that frost with ease on top of that too, with no effort involved at first.
Well, the reason why that's so critical and kind of the way we view it and the way we talk about it is so critical is, as you said, for years and years and years, I looked at it like the frost, a killing frost, a frost in general, right? You see that? Two different descriptors there. That's the end. Hard stop. right? So it didn't, it's probably been maybe 10 years now, but maybe a little bit shorter. I didn't understand that things could survive those colder temps. Right. So in my mind, why would I want to extend, fall is in the middle of September, right? For us, why would I want to extend that for another, a month? Like what am I really getting out of it? But again, the reality is for a lot of us, it's not just, hey, we've reached fall and then your garden's wrapped up, right? A lot of us are going well into winter, depending on what we've planted.
Well, and one thing too, there's a couple more things I like about it before we move on to the next aspect of it. One is it takes less watering at the end of, towards the middle to end of the fall growing season. So it's not as intensive. And then the pest pressure actually gets a lot easier. You don't have 50 different pests coming at you. You've really got just a handful, which for the most part, the same treatment goes across the board for. So I like that aspect of it.
I want to call out something that will be a contradiction if you watch me on Be Better Garden on YouTube or on the Instagrams or the Facebooks, right? You okay there?
Yeah, I'm good. I got excited.
When we're talking about these cool weather crops that we're planting in fall, and I also earlier say something like I planted in the spring, and I had those plants in my garden through spring, summer, fall, and well into winter. That's not my fall garden. Right. My beloved collards that I planted this year in May, they're beautiful too now. I'm just saying. Beautiful and not bitter and all that stuff. Like when I get to November, I'm not looking at that and saying this is my fall garden, right? These things are there. That's the season extension, right? Kind of just naturally with the way that I can grow them here in Chicago. When you talk about pest pressure being, lighter, which I agree with, and watering less, I am looking at these as newly planted, right? I'm looking at these as seeds that were recently sowed for this particular season of gardening, right? I'm not talking about my 8-month-old plants that still do have some pretty high needs and may even have some pests that I've been fighting for a bit of the season. That's when I talked about earlier, you get to start anew. Not only do you just say, hey, I'm planting something new, but you get kind of a do-over when it comes to some of that pest pressure that you described, right? Yeah.
Well, seeing for me, it's totally different because everything for fall has to be started again. Mm-hmm. Like I can't hold anything over in my garden from spring all the way through to fall. So that's just, I'm in coastal North Carolina. Yep. So, that's where we our gardens differ. Mm-hmm. So, that's on there too. So the other thing we need to talk about is, I don't want to come on here and make it seem like it's all rosy and perfect because it absolutely isn't. So we need to talk about what we don't like about it.
This gal is tired.
Yeah, that's part of it.
I've done a really good job, I think, with minimizing the whining that I do as we transition. I haven't? Is that? No. I aspire to do a better job at minimizing the whining that I do coming out of summer into fall.
It's just in early July and you're already doing it. So
next year.
Look, next year's a new year.
I'm on a 3-year path to minimize the whining.
But you're right though. I mean, you got to think about it. You're coming out of the summer season. There's a lot of things occurring. You've been battling pests. You've been battling drought. You've been battling heat. And now, not at the time of this episode, but coming up soon, you're going to start seeing these plants decline. Mm-hmm. And that will wear you out because you're going to be constantly trying to battle it. There may be some confusion. And look, everybody has the confusion. A news flash for you about like, should I keep it going? Mm-hmm. Should I not keep it going? What should I do? Like that's part of it. And that's okay. But when it comes down to it, it's, it is exhausting to get through. But that's why fall is so great because it's a lot more hands off, I think, because you're kind of expecting things to die at some point. So there's not, but so much you can do, you know? So it can be a little bit of a refresher.
Yeah. I mean,
one of the, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
One of the things I don't really like about it is getting them planted. It is an uphill battle for me between the heat and apparently this year we haven't had any rain in 5 weeks. So not a drop. And, you know, that's going to be difficult. But moving forward, you know, after that initial planting, keeping it cool, keeping it watered well, it gets easier, but initially it is tough. But it's part of it too, and it's part of the enjoyment I get because it's a challenge, you know.
Yeah,
I don't want to say that like I'm an expert at gardening, but sometimes you want a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I think
and it's like cracking each season is a challenge. Go.
That August period is especially hard. Right. You know, I think that on a record, August is probably the hottest month across many U.S. states. And this is when I, in my garden, am planting, right, for fall. I think if I'll add, so I concur with all of the things, you know, as far as the things you described that you dislike. Yeah. We don't like the same things. I think the timing of it. I have a lot more grace in the spring when it comes to when I can plant things. Quite literally, I'm saying I'm planting cool weather crops in May. Again, not necessarily recommended, but hey, it works for some, right? I don't have a lot of, you know, room for error. I am going to be planting some of these things, and if I miss a window, then I've missed that crop maturing. Right. It's going to be baby greens for all. Right. And again, there's specific veggies, especially those that create heads, those that, you know, root crops like those. Everything's going to take longer as the days get shorter. And while I can have mature plants sit and use my garden as a refrigerator, those plants need to mature before we get into those cold temps. So that's the reason why July going into August is such a critical time for me. And I just don't have that much wiggle room. And that's a little bit of pressure. I don't like it, but it's the reality. Yeah.
My last thing I don't like about it is when it does finally start to get cold and you're out there and you need to do something and I got to stick my hands in the cold, wet dirt. I don't like that. I don't like when my hands get cold. They get cold very easily. So that's kind of an issue. But at the same time, I enjoy it because I know I can go out in the middle of the day and you'll get those, 65-degree days, 70-degree day where I can go out there and kind of work in the garden a little bit and kind of do some other maintenance out there. Because one thing it does do is it allows, because I'm out there and I'm doing something, I will actually be more proactive in my garden as far as maintaining certain parts, getting certain winter tasks done in the process. So I do, there's kind of a catch-22. There's a little bit of both, but yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't go back. I'm crawling back up the funnel. One of the things I love, that's not on our list. We just talked about one of the things I love is not having this, it's 1:00 in the afternoon. It's so hot. I don't want to be in the garden like I do in the summer. Like the ease and what you just said triggered it for me. The ease in being able to go out into the garden really at any time. Sure, the days are getting shorter, right? So I'm not out there at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, but I could go out there at 1:00 in the afternoon without feeling like I'm going to catch a fire.
Yeah. That wasn't crawling back up the funnel. That was the aphid move. I just sprayed you off the plant and you just climb right back on.
I read something recently about when you spray them, there's some decapitation that happens. That's the reason why they never make it back up. So I don't know if I want to be that.
No, never mind. We'll let you keep your head. So the last thing we need to do is, and this is kind of a broad overview, but there's challenges to overcome in the fall garden. So what's a challenge let's do 2 each. That should round us out.
I think not being greedy. I think, realistic expectations as far as the types and quantities of crops that I'm growing. That's a challenge that I have to overcome every season. I know what I like, but I get big eyes when it comes to it. I could do this and I could grow that. And how about I grow this?
Yeah.
Because there's also this whole, it's the last dance of the growing season, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing else that's going to be planted in my garden beyond my fall garden until next year. So managing the gardener is a challenge that I'm working to overcome.
That is a total Batavia answer. I like it. Yeah. For me, one of the challenges is timing. Timing is every single thing for it. And it's really getting to know, not to sound weird, but it does sound weird, intimately what your plants need and the timing in which they grow, meaning like the growth rates, the speed in which they grow, the fertilizers they need. All of that stuff is very important to getting off on the right foot. And the one thing typically speaking, spring, you more than likely you've planted one of these vegetables and you were successful with it. So now you're just kind of changing it on a different level, but instead of having like a bolt date in mind for it, you're going to have a death date in mind for it. So we need to be realistic about it and understanding your weather to kind of go along with it. So when is it actually going to get too cold? What plants like what plants can take the heat in the summer to get started? What plants can't take the heat? So like the timing for all of that's really important. And that's a challenge to overcome. But it's one of those things, man, you don't learn until you do it. Like you can sit here and you can listen to us all day long, but until you get out there and you plant it, you could watch every video. It doesn't matter. Your yard is different. Case in point, we haven't had rain in 5 weeks. My buddy 10 miles up the road got 3 inches of rain the other day, 2 inches the day before, and then like 3 inches the week before. You know, it's different everywhere you go, and your yard's going to be different. Each year is going to be different. So it's just a constant like learning process. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think so. I mentioned that, but didn't go into the detail you did. So thank you for doing that. That's definitely a challenge, but I'll give you a fresh one. I think that it's very easy to not balance the wrap up of the garden while still trying to actively grow in the garden. Right. Okay. So the best version of me as a gardener in my garden is if I take care of my garden space as the year closes out. And, between managing the final summer crops that I still have on a counter, between, managing the fall crops that are growing and beginning to harvest those, it's very easy for me to kind of, again, in big eyes, wanting to grow in all of the spaces. But plainly put, I need to start putting the garden to bed. I need to start wrapping up some of the garden things and getting them in order to give myself the best chance at getting out next year. It's like Vegas, man. The house always wins, and I'm not the house in this arrangement.
No.
Every year, I find a different set of obstacles, if you will, to be able to kind of meet that challenge. But I'm still working at it. Chipping away.
My last one is it's deciding on here we go. Season extension. So on top of what you're already doing, adding covers, stuff like that. And this this goes back in line with what I said before, where your plants, like some plants are going to need it earlier than others. Deciding if I even want to do that. There may be stuff that I grow. I'm like, you know what? I'm over it. I'm done. How many radishes can I really eat? Stuff like that, So that's really part of it. And it's what type of season extension as well. Like how much effort are you willing to put into it? Do you want to extend your whole garden? Do you want to extend certain beds? Do you want to, drop $1,000 on it? Do you want to drop $10 on it? Like how does that look for you in your garden, in your space? And that's something that I've had issues with before. And each year, basically the way I've landed on it is each year I'll add a little bit more and a little bit more until I get comfortable with what I have. I will say this, for the fall garden, I do not actively put covers on all of the beds. I did 2 or 3 last year, and I may add one more. I got 11 beds, so I may add one more this year. But it's just improving that and just kind of working with that, and then taking a step back while you're doing it and say, hey, did this really work for this? What else could I plant in there? Because it's a good time to evaluate what you can use it for. And the benefit of doing the season extension too is if you do it in the fall, you've already got it set up for an earlier spring planting. So that's something to keep in mind. So that's fall. And I mean, Caleb, that's why you should do fall. So maybe you should be a hardcore fall guy. I don't know. Anybody else, if you're not done a fall garden, I think it's worth a shot, and there's ways to get in, and we're going to go back. We're going to start going through each one of them for the next couple weeks on this special day. We don't even know what day this is releasing. So there you go.
On this not Thursday.
Yeah, just not Thursday. It will not be on Thursday. But one thing I do want to let everybody know, a couple things. One, again, the planter app. 2, the seeds. And for a limited time and a limited run, I'm going to put a couple jars of my honey on the seed shop. So if you want, you can go and get you a jar of that. I'm going to limit it to 1 jar per person so people can get what they want. But we had a pretty good year this year, so we're going to put some jars of honey up there. So check all that out. Become a subscriber. Get ready for fall because it's coming quick, fast, and in a hurry, and it's hot. Don't trip. And remember, let's learn to grow and grow for change.
See ya.
Now you know why people feel like celebrating at harvest time.
All over the world, people have feasting and good times when the crops have been gathered in.
Well, we hope you enjoyed the show, and thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so by checking out our seed shop below. We have all kinds of seeds available for you, and we're going to be adding new seeds shortly, so check that out. Get yourself some seeds. It's free shipping, over $35 orders. So go ahead, get a full garden. What are you waiting for? Order your seeds and stock up. Or you can become a subscriber. You can either be an Apple subscriber or a patron, and that will help support the show. You'll get 1 free episode every month, an extra episode, that is. So we definitely would love to see you over there and become part of our crew. Join the Backyard Gardens community garden in Facebook. That's free. Go ahead, join that, and join the community where all the listeners get together and they can help each other out with their trials and tribulations and just show off their gardens. There's not a better way to do it. And if you're curious about what's going on in our gardens, you can check out our individual YouTube channels. So I'm at Sandy Bottom Homestead, and Batavia is at Be Better Garden. You can check that out and see how each of us are growing and what we talk about on those, because a lot of times we will coincide with the podcast and help add information in that maybe we didn't get out in the show or we feel that's pertinent at a certain time of year. So check that out and enjoy seeing our gardens and what we do in them. And we have an Amazon store which has all the products that we use and recommend in our gardens, and it helps support our show. And we also add to this list periodically, so be sure to check it out periodically to see if there's anything that you need for your garden. Everything that you do, including a like and a subscribe and even a review, will help us learn to grow and grow for change.
See ya.